Welcome to Canada Reads Inspired, featuring two friends who hope to inspire you to read across Canada. Rebecca is an hour from the border in Michigan, and Tara is from Ontario.
For some people, the water represents fear and it's a scary thing, but for me, water is this place where I can breathe.
Hello and welcome to Canada Reads Inspired. I'm Tara and I'm excited to welcome author Alison Gadsby to the show today. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Tara. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited. So Alison lives and writes in Tkaronto, Toronto. Her short fiction appears in Blank Spaces, the Thames Review, the Ex-Puritan, Blue Lake Review, and many other literary journals in Canada and abroad. She holds an MFA from the University of British Columbia and a degree in English literature and creative writing from York University. She is the founder and host of Junction Reads, a prose reading series in the West End of Toronto where she lives in a multi-generational home that includes several dogs. She enjoys writing novels, but is always writing weird, dark, and strangely funny short stories. I'm welcoming Alison here today to discuss her book, Breathing is How Some People Stay Alive, your debut collection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Her collection of short stories that blends horror, speculative fiction, and psychological realism, published by Guernica Editions in March 2026. I am so excited to talk to you about this collection.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, let's just jump in. Tell us about it.
The funny thing is, when I was sitting down and thinking about how to define the collection, the back cover blurb I've learned, which is surprising maybe, everyone writes a query letter to a publisher and, please publish my book because this is what it is and this is what it does. But the reality is the back cover says it all. It blurs the lines between speculative fiction, horror, and realism. There are humanoids, moms who can recycle time, kids trying to survive the generational trauma trickling down from their parents. People fantasize about murder. A woman is haunted by her dead husband and is hoping to be saved by a Jehovah's Witness she's watching coming down the street. And I mean, basically, they're stories that I hoped to explore empathy and sympathy a little bit more, and the idea of what it means to survive when you feel so alone. They're really personal stories, but none of them are autobiographical. And yeah, I think that's what they all are.
Yeah, it sums it up perfectly.
Thanks.
Because there's also like a little interweaving. They're not connected, but they're slightly connected. Like sometimes we revisit characters at different stages in their lives, which I loved.
Yeah. There are a lot of kids who show up as adults in later stories. Cameron and Claire are siblings that show up as little competitive swimmers in, I think it's the second or third story. And Claire shows up again 2 other times in 2 other stories.
What draws you to the short story?
I mean, I think it sounds probably silly to say that I've always loved the short story, but it's true. As kids, we used to get these annuals sent to us from the UK for Christmas. And like from a really young age, like 4 or 5, we used to get these annuals, and they were like hardcover books that had quizzes and cartoons and games and puzzles and stuff like that. But they always had short stories written by girls my age, around my age, and I devoured them, and I would read them like over and over and over again until the next Christmas when another annual would show up. And I think with short stories, I think it's that the characters really come alive. Like I can, even just sitting here talking to you, I can think about one of the stories that I read in an annual as a kid, and who knows how old I was, maybe 8. But this character, this young girl, ran away from home and she ends up in a forest. It's the UK, so she ends up in a forest somewhere, and there's a band of men also living in the forest, and they help her. Like, they give her food, they help her set up her tent, they talk to her. I mean, ultimately, I think they end up telling her she needs to go home and talk to her mom, and like her mom's a good person and whatever. But I don't know. I think about that all the time. I think about this girl running away and popping a tent in the middle of Sherwood Forest, with this band of men coming and helping her. And so I think that's what the short story does. I got the New Yorker as a 20 something year old because someone had said to me they have incredible short stories, so I started reading them. I had a secondhand bookstore up the street from where I lived in my 20s, and the owner knew, I mean, I was reading Harlequins or short stories at the time. And so he would have, anytime an interesting collection of short stories came in, he would hang on to it for me and give it to me. And I think that it's just this slice of life that demands the reader pay attention, because something incredible is going to happen in 10 to 20 pages. And yeah, also I have a brain and a body that is not capable of sitting still. I am constantly doing something, I'm constantly moving, I'm not comfortable doing nothing. And so the short story fits into that in a lot of ways. It doesn't take me very long to read them, and so I can do that and then still function in this like busy mind, busy body space that I live in.
That's a great answer.
I
Great answer. It's funny because I feel like I, as an adult reader, just came to short stories a few years ago. I
Mhm.
always characterized myself as kind of like a novel reader.
Yeah.
But when I was listening to you, when I think back to my childhood, what sticks out are the short stories that I read.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'd mentioned this before, I think, to someone. I don't know how, but I read The Lottery for school when I was in elementary school. And
Right.
that story, I don't know why I was reading it in elementary school, which is, but
Right.
I like
Seriously, it's
kudos
so
to my, I know, and it was a Catholic school too. It was, so I
Oh.
don't know what was going on there. Me, I don't know if I'm misremembering, but I know it was that story has stuck with me for like 50, well, let's say 45 years.
Yeah.
And I recently reread it and it was exactly what I remembered,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I
And
and I think that's what short stories do.
yeah,
Like, I think that pack a punch is maybe oversaid when it comes to short stories, but it is really true. Like, you're pulled in and you're served up a very tension, conflict filled
hmm,
story in a very short amount of time. And
yeah,
I really love that.
me too. I also love sometimes what you short story writers leave out
Yeah.
of the short story
Yeah.
is, like I love going, "Oh, okay, something is not being told to me here, but yet it is being told to me." And that's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I really love, not an unhappy ending, but I really love the idea of an abrupt ending.
Hmm.
And I think that that plays with this 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 empathy that I really want us to feel as readers, as humans in the world. We have a tendency to turn away from uncomfortable things because we don't want to sit in that discomfort. I've had a couple of friends say, I just can't watch the news anymore because it's it's horrific, and human beings are going through such horror. I just can't expose myself to it anymore. And it's a place of privilege to be able
Hmm.
to do that, to be able to turn away and not have to feel empathy, not have to feel sympathy, not have to think about the pain and horror that other human beings are experiencing. And so I think also with the short story, and again, I'm not at all interested in always exposing readers to horror and darkness and the awfulness of the world. I try to put a lot of humor into it, but my stories leave readers uncomfortable because there's usually never a happy ending. There's usually a moment where a reader is left thinking, can I be hopeful for this character? Should I be hopeful for this character? And why do I feel so uncomfortable right now? And I hope that that discomfort makes readers feel empathy, that, there are a lot of people walking around this world carrying pain, carrying trauma, carrying, all of the hurt from generations before. And a lot of them feel alone. And I think they feel alone because everyone out there is like, I can't handle your pain. I can't handle your hurt. You need to bottle that up and carry it around yourself because it's too much for me. And yeah, I hope that that's what I think short stories do that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily my short stories. I'm not gonna say that I've got a book of literary genius, but I hope that my characters stick with people.
Yeah, they do. They do. You mentioned swimming, and swimming is kind of weaved throughout the book. And swimming and breathing, so I'm going to refer to your title, Breathing is How Some People Stay Alive, they are inherently linked.
Mm-hmm.
And for the short story Swimming, the first line of the story is, I'd rather be in the water than anywhere else. Can you discuss the relationship of some of your characters have with swimming?
I mean, ultimately, I think it comes down to that old mantra, write what you know. I didn't really appreciate how much swimming was in the stories until an editor read it and said, hey, there's a lot of swimming and a lot of water in these stories. And I thought, oh, crap, okay, that's true. And so I guess it is just that I was a competitive swimmer growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time in the water. Whether we were in the pool or carrying inner tubes down to the beach, I don't think there was a day in my life that we weren't either at the Y, going to the university pool, at swim practice, just in the water. And a lot of that, there was safety in that. We had a very stormy house growing up, and there was safety at the pool, but there was also this, other thing, this bravery that I had to face because sometimes my brother and I would show up with belt marks and bruises on our bodies, and we had to kind of like in your face stand up for our little selves in some way. And so the water represents a lot for me. The pool represents a lot for me. But the thing about breathing, it's funny because there's the story about her, um, and finding herself at the bottom of the pool came from a real experience when I was swimming and trying to work through a crisis, a personal crisis, and struggling to dream myself out of that crisis. And a thought came to me about, just how wonderful it would be to swim to the bottom of that pool. And it was the Olympium. So like it was a deep pool.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to swim to the bottom of that pool and feel the weight of all that water, and the idea that I would somehow breathe easier down there than I was at the time breathing in real life, above the water. And so I guess that is sort of it, right? Like for some people the water represents fear and it's a scary thing, but for me water is this place where I can breathe, where I can find serenity, where I also have to think about trauma in some ways. Um, and my kids were competitive swimmers, and so there's the story in there about the better parent. Who's the better parent? These
Yeah.
crazy parents screaming down at their kid and anxiously writing down times and expecting this kid to shave off 30 seconds. Like those are real parents screaming down at their children, expecting their children to work miracles, and if they don't, they're in the car on the way home being shouted down. And so, there's that too. Like my contemporary experiences as a swim parent are in there as well.
Okay, in your short stories, you use elements of horror and speculative fiction.
Hmm.
And Allison and I mentioned before we started recording, I told her how much I loved this element of the stories. I'm thinking specifically of the fantastic forms and their presence in several of the stories. Can you
Hmm.
tell us about these fantastic forms, what they represent in the stories, and your inspiration for them? Sorry, that's a lot, but
Yeah.
I was like enthralled by these stories.
I thank you so much. I mean, the reality is that they just came to me a lot of times. I'm driving, I'm just thinking about, like the ideas just come to me. And so the humanoids just came to me. But in thinking about, how can I use them?
Mhm.
How can I use this world of the fantastic forms? How can I use that to express all of my thoughts and feelings about the world? Again, not to overkill the word empathy, but again, I thought, what if I create this world where these fantastic forms are humanoids that really look like human beings, and in this world, people are either proud to have them, like I spent
Mhm.
150 grand on this nanny, like, look how amazing I am. But then there are people who hide them, right? Like in one of the stories, the prime minister has a couple of kids that the media are convinced are forms, and the prime minister and his wife insist that they're not forms, they're not humanoids, they are in fact their children, and they refuse their kids to be used as political pawns, and so on and so forth. And so there I had this idea that these humanoids exist for some people as intimate partners, as best friends, as husbands, wives, as these people that mean something to them. But then what does it mean when they're discarded?
Mhm.
And there is an allusion in one of the stories to the Welland Canal, and that they're finding all of these humanoids in the Welland Canal because people just kind of get fed up and throw them in. But in understanding the level of intimacy created between the humanoids and the humans, and these oftentimes horrific deaths, the quote deaths that the humanoids experience, I thought, I wonder if a reader is going to feel empathy for the humanoids. And if not empathy, I wonder if they will not like the humans who treat the humanoids this way, because those humans lack some kind of uh, compassion or capacity for care. And so again, right, like the idea that this speculative world exists in a very real world, where allegories of grief and loss and death and love and abuse exist. How can I get the readers to connect to the very human side of all of that without a kind of didactic expression of, well, here's what happens when a very tall woman lives a life where her father has no faith in her ability, and she gets married to an abusive husband, and, has to do whatever she can possibly do to survive this abusive husband. And then to the reader, that just becomes a woman trapped in an unhappy marriage, and she does something about it. But, when that partner is a humanoid, it just takes on a different kind of experience for the reader.
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of another one, and I'll do this without spoilers, that involved a humanoid, the
Mhm.
nanny, uh, a father, and his young daughter. And
Mhm.
what happens there, you get a really based on what you just said, this complicated reaction to what happens, in
Mhm.
that I could see both sides. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, no, don't. But I understand it. Like at the same time, like it was,
Yeah. And
yeah.
that's just grief, right? That
Hmm.
the father, Amelia's a young girl, her mother just died. 7 or 8 months ago, and this guy's overwhelmed with grief. He's not managing very well the loss of his wife, the loss of his daughter's mother. And so, when he's presented with this kindergarten teacher as a potential homeschooler slash governess kind of
Mhm.
thing, he starts to imagine a return to the life that he lost, and how much this humanoid loves his daughter, and maybe this humanoid could love my daughter as much as my wife did. And so it's the fantasy of returning to the life that he had before, but with also funny aspects, like how incredible her body is, and how he misses having sex, and all of these kind of basic feelings mixed in with the grief and loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the kid too, right? Like the
Oh,
kid,
yeah.
like a lot of the kids in the book, the kid sees beyond the present, right? Sees beyond this momentary collapse of the world, right? Like every kid in the book, I think, sees the future for what it could be, or for what they could hopefully make out of it, despite the trauma and abuse and everything else. And so Amelia can see the future far better than her father
Yeah.
can.
I found most of the children seem to be more emotionally aware or even
Hmm.
mature, more mature
Hmm.
than the adults in some of the
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, that probably comes from me as a kid. I was a very thoughtful kid.
Mm.
I was constantly thinking about the possibility of a life outside of my own, probably because it was not that great. I mean, I had four siblings, so in some respects I had a great childhood because I had, four best friends built into a world where I had no friends. And that's great. I mean, I can't imagine having the life that I had, and having been a single child, an only child. And so I that idea of a life existing outside of me, whether it's me fantasizing at church about the other families at church and writing stories for them, and whatever, there was always the possibility of something better than what I had in that moment, on that Sunday morning, or in the car driving somewhere with my, father, incapacitated or whatever. There was always the possibility of some more. And I think all of these kids carry that hope. They carry those dreams.
Yeah. Okay. I mentioned in my intro the book series, a prose reading series, sorry, Junction Reads. Do you want to tell us about that?
So it is a prose reading series. I started it 12 years ago. It was
Wow.
born out of a writer's workshop that I had at the time, and we were all kind of thinking about ways of building our own community beyond the little room that we critiqued each other's work in. And I remembered a reading series long, I don't know, 10 years before that, that I kind of went to just with the hope of what is this? What are all
Mhm.
these writers doing in this bar downtown? And it was such an incredible experience. The woman that ran it, I was just like, oh, she loves all of these writers. She was warm and welcoming to everyone that was in the room. And I thought, okay, I'm going to see if I can do this. I just walked to a local venue in the Junction and asked the owner what he thought of me starting a reading series. And he was like, I love it. I could give you Sundays between 5 and 7, which I thought was perfect.
Mhm.
And I contacted all of my professors at York and booked them in for readings. A few of them had books out at the time. And then the following season, I reached out to um, friends from UBC, friends from York, like, come and read your unpublished stories. And Book Hug Press, which is a local Junction publisher, I contacted them. And that was it. Like, the momentum built pretty quickly. And we had like 4, sometimes 5 authors
Wow.
for each event. And then the third year, I think, is when I sat down and thought, okay, I can no longer say yes to everybody
Mhm.
because I just didn't have the time. And so I started, this little thing called curation and building like themed Sundays and themed readings. And yeah, and then we had to start limiting it to small press publishers, which we did, I think, the third year, because there were just so many writers who wanted to read. And we've been a small press prose reading series ever since then. So that's like we started in 2014. So probably the 2016 season is when we
Wow.
were small press only. And we're still that. We present the best, like the absolute best current, like
Mhm.
stuff has to be public. And over the years, we've had to add all of these like policies to our curation process, like needs to be published within the last year. Writers can't return within 2 seasons, like 2 full seasons have to pass before writers can come back. Like we've had to add all of these little things in order to make curation easy because I have an impossible time saying no,
Yeah.
especially when a book is presented to me and I'm like, I want to read that book. I want to talk to that author. Yeah, and that's it. And I love talking to writers about their books. It's
That's
my
amazing.
favorite part
How
of life.
can listeners who are in the area catch up
So
on?
the website is junctionreads.ca.
Okay.
Our events are usually on Sundays in person at Type Books in the Junction, which is Mavity and Dundas, just east or just west of Kiel. And we also have online events, which we started during the pandemic and just continued because there are incredible small press authors from publishers all over Canada. And so we tend to alternate in person, online, but there's a greater demand for in person. So we've usually got 7 in person events and 5 online events. And then that's when the first 30 created, which was a writer's series. I created this Instagram live series because there was such a huge demand for the online events and I couldn't say yes to everybody, so I do those writerly chats too. But if you go to
Wow.
junctionreads.ca, you'll see the schedule and everything we've got planned for the rest of the season and next season.
Awesome. Okay. Now it's also, this is how I love to end a chat, is by like growing my ever growing TBR. It's huge and I don't care how long it gets. So I would love for you to share some of your favorite books, your current reads, whatever you want to share and highlight with us. Go for
Okay.
it.
So you and I are having this conversation at the beginning of May. So I'm going to talk about short stories because May is short story month.
I was
Um,
hoping you would. I was hoping you would.
Okay. Yeah. And honestly, the list is long and I apologize. I really tried. I thought, okay, you know what? I'm just going to like name everything off the top of my head and see where I get. And that ended up being very long. So I apologize. I own 2 copies of Weird Babies by Jaclyn Desforges because I accidentally ordered 2 of them. I don't know how that happened, but lucky person is going to get my extra copy. Tell Me Pleasant Things About Immortality by Lindsay Wong, Lesser Known Monsters by Kim Fu, and Raphael Has Pretty Eyes by Elaine McCluskey were um, like really important parts of my editing process.
Yeah.
And if anyone hasn't read Holly Gattery's A Collection of Flash Widow Fantasies, you really have to read that.
Yeah.
Damian Tarnopolsky was in my writers group, like, I'm not kidding, 20 years ago. And I remember sitting there thinking, this guy's super talented. He's going to think my short stories are garbage. But despite that, we've maintained our friendship. Every Night I Dream, I'm a Monk, and Every Night I Dream, I'm a Monster is a strange, weird, incredibly written collection of stories. Carly Baker's books, both Last Woman and Bad Endings, amazing. Caitlin Galway's collection, A Song for Wildcats, there's only 5 stories in there, but it's really, really, really good. And honestly, it's endless. Chanel Sutherland, Layaway Child, is coming to Junction Reads in June. She and I were kind of going back and forth on an Instagram message about how we really want the short story to have a renaissance, and we're determined. Pratap Reddy, Billy Ray, Bill Court, Catherine Bush, like it's endless. And on
Yeah.
my TBR pile, like those are books I've read. On my TBR pile, Carrie Fagan, A Fast Horse Never Brings Good News, Smash and Grab by Mark Anthony Jarman, Death by a Thousand Cuts, Shashi Bhatt, Flights by Olga Tokarczuk, The Longest Way to Eat a Melon by Jaclyn Zongli Ross. Like, there's a lot. And outside of short story collections, and this is going to be a lot. I mean, all of my friends, Heidi Von Pales, K.R. Wilson, Lisa Richter, Margot Lapierre, Liz Worth, I'm doing reading events with them, so they need a shout out. But
Yeah.
4 books I really, not short story collections, 4 books I really want people to read. Pizza Before We Die.
Oh.
I just started it. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Hassan Kanafani was posting about Gaza on Reddit, and somehow those posts got to Yasuko Tan, an incredible writer from BC, and it's now a book. Those posts have now been edited into a book. It's incredibly heartbreaking. Glio Dang, Would Rather Be Dead. And maybe this isn't fair to mention because I interviewed her for Howl, the literary radio show on CIUT, but I burst into tears twice reading that book, but I also laughed. It's a brave and brilliant book about grief and loss. And short stories. Chrysalis by Anuja Varghese was an incredible collection of short stories, but she also has a trilogy, a Bollywood romantasy coming out. The first book comes out May 27th, A Kiss of Crimson Ash. So freaking enjoyable.
Okay.
I can't wait for that trilogy to hit. And the book that is going to be the first of my summer reads, because as you know, with all of the reading I have to do, it's hard to do the reading that I want to do. Carrie Ann Lung's book, Wonderland Road, is at the top of the pile, and I can't wait to read that. It's supposed to be a dystopian kind of, yeah. I don't know enough about it to hit it, but I can't wait to read it.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Alison.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I loved this. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And may all your reading be inspired.
Thank you so much, Tara.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you for listening to Canada Reads Inspired. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing wherever you listen. You can connect with the podcast and Rebecca on Instagram at Canada Reads Inspired, and with Tara at On a Branch Reads. May all your reading be inspired.